Hello, aspiring hunters! Welcome to the Hunter Experience. When it comes to the universe of Hunter x Hunter, few things spark as much curiosity as the mysterious 5 threats originating from the Dark Continent. These are entities so dangerous that mere contact with them has pushed humanity to the brink, forcing it to retreat in the face of forces that, by their very nature, defy all logic and expectation. If you're prepared for the incredible hunter journey, click like and subscribe to the channel to join our troop. Don't forget to comment on who your favorite character is in Hunter x Hunter. Now, let's continue with this incredible story. Among them, Brian, the botanical weapon, emerges as a particularly fascinating and terrifying figure. He is, at once, an entity and a concept, a living being, but perhaps also a machine of destruction forged by nature itself. Perhaps, just perhaps, Brian represents something far greater than readers can perceive at first glance. The first time we hear about Brian is in the context of his appearance within the ruins of a labyrinthine city located north of Lake Mobius. In this setting, the United States of Saherta sends its elite forces hoping to explore the unknown and possibly extract some advantage from such a hostile territory. But what they encounter, it seems, is not just a dangerous place, but a guardian, a living calamity that defends the ruins relentlessly. I think the detail of Brian being described as a guardian is crucial here. Perhaps he is not merely a predator or a purposeless engine of destruction. What if Brian is there fulfilling a greater role, one that humans cannot fully comprehend? It's as if he were part of an ecological or cultural system so alien that it completely escapes our understanding. In the manga, it is mentioned that upon entering the labyrinth where Brian resides, the soldiers found miraculous herbs capable of curing 10,000 different diseases. This alone raises countless questions. Why are these herbs being protected by Brian? Could he be a sort of biological caretaker whose purpose is to ensure that this miraculous resource does not fall into the wrong hands? Perhaps Brian exists to maintain the balance of the region, preventing something so precious from being exploited greedily. I think this would make sense, considering how Togashi often explores the relationship between humans and nature in his works. In many cases, humanity is portrayed as greedy, invading territories it does not understand and suffering the consequences of its recklessness. Brian's design is also something worth noting. He appears as a massive sphere, possibly made of pollen, spores, or some other even more exotic biological material, mounted atop a human body. This body seems to act as a host, and there is a crucial detail that is easy to overlook. In the illustrations of the victims of the 5 threats, we see decapitated corpses with exposed entrails. I think this suggests that Brian not only destroys, but also uses human bodies in some way, perhaps as part of his life cycle. What if he implants a seed or spore into the bodies of his victims, using them as soil to create new life forms? This would raise questions about the extent to which Brian is a conscious being, or merely part of a natural reproductive cycle. Does he think and act deliberately, or are his actions purely instinctual? This idea of Brian using a host makes me think of another interesting aspect, his relationship with the labyrinth. I think the labyrinth might not just be a setting, but part of Brian himself. Perhaps he is connected to the ruins in some way, as an extension of his body or mind. This would explain why he acts as a guardian. He is not merely protecting the space, he is the space. This symbiosis between Brian and his surroundings would make him even more dangerous, as any attempt to confront him would essentially mean fighting the territory itself. Considering that no human has managed to defeat or even understand him, it's possible that Brian exists beyond the capabilities of direct human confrontation. The threat level attributed to Brian is another aspect that stands out. Ging Freaks, one of the series' most enigmatic and intelligent characters, classifies Brian as an A-level threat. However, the president of the Hunter Association Cheadle Yorkshire raises this classification to B+, indicating that he is even more dangerous than the Chimera ants. I think this difference in classifications is significant because it reflects the complexity of Brian as a threat. While the Chimera ants were organized, conscious, and led by Meruem, who, in my opinion, is one of the most fascinating characters in the series, Brian seems to operate on an entirely different scale. He is not an enemy that can be defeated with brute force or conventional strategy. Perhaps his danger lies precisely in his incomprehensibility. How do you fight something you can't even understand? In the chapter where Ging explains the 5 threats, he mentions that the Dark Continent is a place where humanity has encountered challenges beyond its comprehension. I think Brian is a perfect example of this. He is not just a powerful creature, but a reflection of humanity's arrogance in trying to dominate a territory that does not belong to it. What if Brian is a physical manifestation of the Dark Continent itself, a kind of defense mechanism created to protect its deepest secrets? If that's the case, confronting him would be the same as challenging the very heart of the unknown, something that, so far, no one has succeeded in doing. Additionally, the Chimera ants, so notorious for their threat to the human world, were once seen as creatures that, no matter how advanced and terrifying they became in their final forms, were considered limited in potential within the Dark Continent. When compared to other threats in that enigmatic territory, they seem to be just one of the many faces of the savagery inhabiting that land. However, contrary to expectations, what appeared to be a dead end in evolution on that shadowy continent transformed into an explosion of power and adaptation when the Chimera ants managed to escape into the human world. Initially in the Dark Continent, they were nothing more than a wild species that, even at their most developed state, lacked the intelligence or strength of other creatures inhabiting the region. However, something changed when a small group of them, likely led by more cunning and resilient ants, found a breach in the natural defenses surrounding them. They escaped, crossing the invisible barriers of the continent and entering a completely new world, where the wild nature that defined them was distorted by the presence of humans and animals. When the Chimera ants broke into the human world, they seemingly left behind much of their history in the Dark Continent. However, and this is something few consider, perhaps some of the older and stronger Chimera ants still remain there, hidden deep within that wild territory, waiting. These creatures, unlike the others who consumed humans and animals, may have devoted themselves to something even more insane, preying on the native and predatory creatures of the Dark Continent itself. These ants, few in number but incomprehensibly powerful, represent a lineage distinct from what we know. They are not merely the products of unrestrained evolution caused by consuming weaker beings from the human world. Instead, they have been shaped by a more primal, more ferocious force something that led them to devour beings from the Dark Continent itself, creatures known for their immense strength, resilience, and abilities that far surpass any human capability. These ants didn't need humans to grow stronger. They had already found what they were searching for, an undeniable source of power that transformed them into something far beyond what they could have become if they had stayed confined to the borders of the Dark Continent. By consuming these extraordinary beast creatures that are nearly unbeatable even to skilled hunters and capable of decimating entire armies, these ants acquired a strength rivaling the legends of immortal monsters and mythical entities. What makes them so dangerous is not just their increased physical strength, but also their heightened intelligence and adaptability. They didn't merely absorb the flesh of these beings, but also their abilities, instincts, and resilience traits unique to the creatures of the Dark Continent. Every piece of devoured flesh provided not just physical energy, but also mental and instinctual growth, allowing these ants to develop a far more sophisticated survival strategy, something that even Meruem, with his extraordinary evolution, never managed to achieve. These survivor ants are not just a more powerful version of Meruem. They are something entirely different, closer to a primordial force of the Dark Continent itself. They have absorbed the essence of the fiercest creatures ever recorded, becoming beings that are nearly immortal, almost invincible. It is no exaggeration to say that should one of these ants manifest outside the Dark Continent, the impact would be impossible to contain. Therefore, while most of the Chimera ants we know grew stronger and evolved primarily by consuming humans and animals, there exist a few ants in the Dark Continent who, by feeding on unimaginably powerful beasts, have become so strong that any comparison with Meruem or any other form of human life becomes trivial. They are the pinnacle of adaptation and destruction, a representation of what happens when a creature surpasses every limit of evolution, a species that becomes a true force of nature, indestructible, unbeatable, and perhaps even uncontrollable. But the most unsettling part is that despite their strength, the mystery of the surviving ants in the Dark Continent remains unsolved. Without a doubt, they are an existential threat, not just to humans, but to any life form that dares cross into that cursed territory. The mere possibility that these ants might still be hiding there, waiting for an opportunity to emerge, reveals an unnerving truth. The Dark Continent is not just a place of mysteries, it is a domain where even the universe's most dangerous creatures become prey, and where the cycle of evolution continues unpredictably with no end in sight. For these ants, what remains is an existence as an enigma, a silent and growing threat that may one day rise to consume everything that dares challenge their dominance. What do you think? Share your thoughts. Hunters, that was our video for today. Leave a like if you enjoyed our video, subscribe to the channel as it is still very new, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then.